Hey everyone, creating UI and layout in something like Odin Rlay is pretty difficult. So I made myself a little package that's publicly available for anyone to use. I call it Odin Rlay, and it uses a nice little rect cut method. You have rectangles and you make cuts on it to organize your UI. I have this little example here. It doesn't provide much functionality. It shows you the alignment, different type of coloring, different boxes. So we see we have a header text of different color. So we have a more darkened text. We also have lighter buttons and darker buttons. We have text on the left, text centered, and we have text on the right. And we have some nice other effects. You can make really quite cool UI with some simple logic. If you spent any time making UI in a graphics framework like Raylib or SDL, you'll know it's pretty difficult because you've got to make it yourself. Engines like Godot or Unity have all the functionality there for you, or even assets to make it even easier to design pretty good UI. But for us, we got to do it ourselves. We got to draw the rectangles, make sure it's the right size and all that. It can get pretty overwhelming quite quickly. So I've made a nice little package for Odin and Raylib that lets you create a nice layout with some pretty simple rules. Now, it's not my original idea. Using a method called rect cut, where you just make cuts to a rectangle. So if you imagine the window is your square rectangle, you then make cuts of it of like a certain amount. So you can make sidebars, banners, toppers, buttons within a cut. So you can do all that pretty easy with just a few simple rules. Now, it's not my idea. It was originally an article, but unfortunately this article has apparently gone. It now just returns with a 404 error. So getting it set up is really easy. Just have the package here ready and imported, which is really simple. Just have the folder with the Rlay here, and then you can just import it and have whatever abbreviations you want. In this case, I have RC for rect cut. Quite nice. I just have the usual Raylib initialization. But you don't necessarily have to do it. If you don't want to use any Raylib functionality, you can just use the cutting functionality and use your own kind of framework. It just comes with a lot of draw rectangle stuff. And with that, we can just start. We can have a layout and then use an RC rectangle. So this provides the minimum X, the minimum Y, and the max X and the max Y. So this is sort of like how much space we're going to use of the screen available. So in this case, we're using 500 of 250. If we were to do this as 100 for the minimum X, that means we actually would have a rectangle size of 400 width and 250 height, because that's the minimum that we can go if we can't cut it any further. And then we can just use an rc.drawRect, provide it with the rectangle we have, give it a color, and we can also provide it with a radius. So if you want a curved rectangle, we can. And there's some additional things such as the amount of segments used to make a curved one. We can also have a border size and a border color as well, but it's just defaulted to nothing, so transparent border. These are probably not final at the moment, but I still have these features just for now in case you want to use them. They are pretty useful. I'll probably make changes. It's still quite an early package. If we run this now, we'll be able to see a nice little red rectangle in the top left of our screen. Nice. So we can obviously use the screen size and, like as seen here, the screen size width to inject into our layout, screen height. And then once we run this, it will provide us with a nice red screen in our whole window, like so. If we actually want to make cuts on our variable and our rectangle, we should probably move it within our loop, because if we have it outside of our loop, our window here, it will result in us just constantly referencing and cutting it until there's nothing left. So we need it so it essentially reinitializes the rectangle. So now we have to draw a rect. If we draw it now, it will create a red screen, but we can use rc.cut and we can choose a direction. So let's do cut left, and we can provide it our layout, which we pass it by reference because we can return it as a new rectangle or not. And then we can give it that amount. So we can do, let's say 250. We can make a cut of 250 pixels. Now when we run that, we'll see now there's a white segment that we're missing. Be cool. How can it affect? These factors will return as a value. They'll return as a cloned the segment that we cut off. So we can use this as like a sidebar, for example, that we have here. And we can also rc.drawThisRect with sidebar plus RL, a color of our choosing in Raylib, like green. And then again, a radius or no radius. In fact, let's leave it like that and have a non-radius one. And there we go. Pretty sweet. And that's the core idea of it. You just make cuts to your rectangle. It's really that simple. Now, cutting by pixels is pretty useful, but if you're dealing with multiple resolutions and you want it to be a bit more responsive, then I've added a cut by percentage. So this is great if you're, scaling, obviously, if you have a resolution of 1080p, but you also have a 4K, then fitting by 10% is going to scale pretty well. I've also added a little cut by multiple top percent. So if you're making multiple cuts, then you can do, rather than doing a single cut at a time, which will be difficult because if I have a width of 100 pixels, for example, and I make a 10% cut, well, it will give me a rectangle of 90 left. But if I make another 10% cut, well, actually, I'm going to end up with a pixel that has 81 because 10% of 90 is 9. So with this function, it just handles it for you so you don't get that issue. So this is really great for making all the bars, for example. So in this, I have the layout of cutting from the top. So 10%, then 80%, then 10% again. And for the sidebars again, I do 10%, 80%, and then 10%. And then what I've split my whole screen layout into is a top bar, left bar, center, a right sidebar, and a bottom banner. So now that I have them all cut up, you can see that I have this banner that will scale pretty effectively. So I can, for example, close this down and go back to my code. And if I change the height, have it by 1920 by 1080, so half the resolution. Hopefully if I should rerun it should be okay. There we go. Because I'm using borderless, it will default to this size. But you can see it's still scaled perfectly. In fact, I can get rid of this toggle borderless window or total window. There you go, perfectly like that. You can also render text as well, or I should say draw text, and you can provide it alignment as well. But you will need to initialize the font. Even if you're using the default Rlay font, you will need to init, and that's simply because the way we're using to measure text to find out how to align it. So I'm using measure text EX, which you must pass it in the font, so you need to load in the default font. I did try and get it so you could it was tried to auto load at the start, but it didn't work. So you will need to tell it, hey, I need to load this when you're making it. And it's pretty simple at the moment because you can do, for example, you see in this highlight, there's a font size and a spacing that you can do. I haven't done support for spacing, so it's just default to 5. And there are additional changes you can do when you're loading your own custom font. You can load your own custom font. You don't have to load a default font. But I still need to finish this off. There's no text wrapping, but you can use text and align it nicely. And so it's good for icons and just small text for the moment. So if I, for example, load it up, you see that we have the hello world that appears in the center of our nice black screen, which is from, again, the UI content center. So we just need to pass it the rect and we tell it where we want to align in. And like I said, I can just align it wherever I want. Have it left, for example, and I run that, go align to the left. I can even add some additional padding, so 20, for example. So that is how much space should I give it. I can add a lot more space, like 200 for 2000. It'll go really far. So you can do all sorts of things like that for now. Okay, this is cool. Let's build our own UI from scratch, like a nice little template that we'll do. Now, I've got some additional features that I'll show you as I go along and build it. Let's give it a go. I'm just using the center layout I used earlier from the UI content that we generated all the sidebars. We can imagine it as like a little pop-up in a game or something. It doesn't take the whole screen, it just takes up small center. Think of like Minecraft's UI inventory or Stardew Valley's one. And we'll build it from there. So I think I want like a sidebar, a top bar, the main little content, and then bottom banner, kind of like seen in the example. So let's first make the sidebar because we only have one of those. And we'll use RC cut left, then pass in our main layout as a reference, and we'll make the cut of 10% just like so. And to make our layers of banners, we'll call it like layout. Shall we just call it layers for now? RC.cut top, multiple top percent. We want the main layout again, not main layout. And then we'll do, I guess, 1.1, 0.8, and 0.1. And that'll give us a top bar, center content, and our footer as well. Let's go and draw it next to see what it looks like. Okay, so just to draw, we'll just draw them as mostly black, and then maybe like a white border so we can see them. So do RC draw rect. Start with our sidebar, and we'll provide it at RL black, and we'll have a border color of RL.white for now. No radius, RC, and then we can actually use L in layers, and then we can do an RC.draw rect with the L dot black with white border like so. And actually an important thing we need to do when we make these arrays, we need to defer and delete them from memory. We do not, we'll get memory leaks. In fact, I can actually show you it. If I just remove this for now, in fact, and I just run it, and there's see, we've got our nice little things. We need to make it more size for our sidebar and top bars perhaps. But yeah, So now if I literally scooch this over, we see, look at this, we're leaking 45 bytes per, basically 60 times every second because we're running at 60 FPS. So it will eventually, you eventually will run out of memory. So make sure you delete it. Okay, I'm going to make a modification like I said. This was too much. Let's go for 0.3 actually. I want a 30%. And then maybe 2. And 2 here. Oops. I want to do that. Close that. So 2, we will need to take away. This will be 6. It will be 60%. And then when we run that. Okay, that looks a bit better. I think sidebar a bit too chunky. Maybe 2. Maybe actually a quarter, like 25. Let's see how that looks. Okay, that's decent. I think that'll work for now. Okay, this is pretty nice so far. Let's add some padding actually. We could just cut each section, but I've added a function that makes it easier. And actually I want to draw a background as well. We can use draw rect here, provide our main layout, not make aligned, main layout, there we go. Then we'll do a grey background in this case, like so. And we can actually add a padding to it of the main layout. So undo 20, maybe. See how that looks. Okay, it looks okay. Maybe we can also additionally make layouts to each section we have here. So I can just make a little padding here as well, like so. And again at 20. And when we run that, we'll see we have it also there. We will also need to make padding to our sidebar. And I'll do it after we make the cut to our layers, otherwise this will also double, like it'll be like double adding padding, which we don't want. So now they should be all of it even height. Like there you go, looks kind of nice. So it looks nice. I think we should change the color, and I want a nice easy way of color. I want to restrict the amount of colors I use. Well, I've actually added a automatic Git repositories, a UI color structure within or enum I should say, within the rect cut. So this provides some, it has a default color scheme, but you can also provide your own color palette to it. We have a background, primary, secondary, accent, race, and sunken. The same also goes for a text color, has a few main, muted, and dim. And this was seen in that example I showed you earlier. I'm using a color palette scheme to get those colors really easily, and it uses a different function. So you can use draw rect to specify a specific color. If you have something really specific that needs to have its own color, then you can do that. But I also wanted it so rather than just pass it in the color in every time, just use a enum for it, and that will determine the color, and it just adds really nice consistency. So if I go in and, for example, swap all these draw rects, and there's one called UI, maybe not the best name for it, but now it'll give us different parameters. And if I see here, we now provide it a role, a UI color. So this is our main background, so we can call it background, for example. And we still have the same border color, radius, segments, and all that, and border size. We just now have an enum to decide the color we want it for. So again, for the sidebar, for example, we could choose, instead of having the border, we can now do dot. Maybe we can have it as a secondary color. Let's try it for both of these actually. Draw rect like that. Should copy this, pass it in as the F instead, and let's see how that looks. Why is it L? Sorry about the little mistake. Then we rerun it. Now we have this. A bit bright on the white background. Let me swap this to black for clearing it. Maybe that'll make it a little bit better. And so, okay, not too bad. Maybe we could try a little bit of a darker color. We could do the accent, for example, like so, which is pretty cool. Maybe a bit too much, for example, but we can give it experiment around with it. Okay, so we have our layout now. We could add a bit of text, for example. We also have an rc.draw text UI as well, which also, like I said, provides us with the colors. So for example, we could have the sidebar one, for example, and then we can again, have it the alignment of sidebar, and then the text color. We could have the dim muted main. Let's go for main for this one. A font size of 40, and then alignment of left. And we'll keep padding just to 0 for now. I'll also need to move this below where we render it, because this will draw over it, because we're sort of the code is reading it top down, so it'll render this first, and then when we render this, it'll render on top of it. So obviously, you would, if this was before, you wouldn't be able to see it. But now if we run it, let's just see how it looks like. Okay, there you go. It's in the sidebar, but in the center is in height wise. That is a feature that I am missing, which is alignment in terms of in terms of height, for example. So you can do the line left, center, right. It's only on the x-axis, but obviously the y-axis should be supported as well. So if you want to do the top left, or the bottom left, or the bottom right, bottom top right, and of course the center top and the center bottom as well. I do need to add those as well. But for now, we can make cuts to the rectangle so it looks like it's at the top left. So really simple to do. Again, let's just make a cut to our sidebar. RC dot cut top percent. Let's give it maybe how much should we do? Maybe 0.1, 10%, or maybe less, 0.05%. And we need to make sure this returns a value as well. Let's call it the sidebar header, like so. And if we give it to our now text, oops, what happened there? Like so. And we then run it. Now we have the sidebar on its own, and we still have it's not got the grayed background, and it has the remainder here, which is pretty cool. What happens if I don't actually know what's going to happen if I make the text bigger. Okay, there you go. Look pretty nice. We could try different colors as well, such as muted maybe, which looks pretty nice as well. So all cool. Now we can draw the amount of buttons we want. Now, if we want to cut it an even amount, then we could try and do it by percentage, but then we have to figure out what an even percentage is, and we could get some rounding errors. So I've added a function that does it for you. Let's call it sidebar buttons and do RC dot cut multiple evenly. We can do it by the height we want to do it by, and in this case we have again the sidebar, like I said. And what we can do is how many pieces we want it. So let's do 5 buttons, like so. And if we actually do this, if we run this now, we won't see any grey box because all of it's been used up, all the remaining amount. I'm also getting a memory leak because I'm not deleting this from memory. Anything that returns an array, you need to make sure you delete from memory. It's just a little heads up so we can see that if I hover over it, it's an array of Rex. And so just like we did with the layers, we can then let's just remove this for now. Oh, we could keep it and have it as a background and actually add a bit of padding. Let's do that actually. Let's first go back, add a bit of padding like so. Draw it after the header. In fact, when we make cut, then we can do R for SB for like sidebar buttons in sidebar buttons. We can then do rc.add padding to SB. Add a small amount of 10. We'll just add a small amount of 10. Make sure we pass this in by a reference, for example. Then do rc.drawRect again, UI, and we can provide it with this. What color shall we give it? Primary raised, maybe secondary. We'll have no border for now, and we'll just do it like that and see what it looks like. Okay, looks pretty decent. We have a bit of padding as well. Why don't we add a bit of radius actually, of 8, for example. Not too bad. We could also add a bit of text to our buttons as well. Just for now, we could do rc.draw text. Again, UI, provide it as just a button, for example, just as a placeholder. Give it that rectangle, our SB. What do we need? Text role, dim. Let's go for dim. Font size of 40 again. Alignment to be as the center. Now when we run that, it looks pretty decent. I've added a rect button. That's really simple for now. It's not finalized. You can just provide the rectangle that you want interaction with. In this case, the SB we want. And give it an if statement. It just returns true or false. All it does is check for the left mouse button pressed and relies on Raylib's get mouse position to work. It's really simple for now because obviously it needs changing, so it should support other buttons as well. You may want a right click, a middle mouse, or even a keyboard press as long as the mouse is over it, for example, or some sort of keybind. So that's also needed as well. But I can actually use off of FMP, just print line, and I could provide it like the test, and maybe actually I can show you. We'll return like the index that's being pressed, so you can return that. If we do that, good work. So if I run it now, I click these buttons, you can't really see it, but if I close this, actually we can see that the buttons I pressed did respond with the value that when they were clicked. So add some sweet simple interaction for now. Just as like a little additional example, we could also do, just for now, we can imagine that index 0 is a highlighted button, so the user's hovering over it for now. And what we could do is have a different color for when they are highlighted over it. So if I have, index equals 0, so the first element, pretend I'm like pressing it, or it's an active tab, for example. We move these like so, have the draw rectangles and have them like that. We could then have this, for example, as primary, and then this as a dot main because we like highlighted over it. And then when we run it, for example, there you go, we have it. Okay, main maybe not the best color. We'll try accent, for example. I don't like, wasn't too fond of the darkness there. Well, accent's a bit better, but then maybe we could even have it as a bigger font, for example, when highlighted over, like so. So it's not too bad. So you can do stuff like that. Another little thing I like to is maybe make little cuts against, like, really small ones against the edge of a rectangle and have them as a little highlight color. If I have all my non-selected buttons, I could do an RC rect. Let's return it, little tab maybe. RC dot cut left percent, for example, of our SB and make like a tiny one, like literally 0.5. So when we make this tiny cut and I do an RC draw rect UI, again, provided the SB, what color shall we give it? Raised, secondary, sunken? Maybe try primary with this one. We don't want a radius, we'll just have it like that actually. And if we run it like so, we locked it. Oh, wait, hold on. Tab. And there we go. And then we have these little tabs, which I think are really cool. And you could have, you know, you could just use a normal draw rect as well. And then have like the RL dot, you know, green or something to like a little good thing, for example, as so. So I think that's a really cool effect as well. I like that one. That's a good one. I think just one last thing. I kind of demonstrated most of what the package can do. I want to, you know, let's add our own UI colors because I had to support, like I said, with the background and all that. You can set your own UI set colors you want of this, and it's based on this one called Real Time Colors website, and it has a text, background, primary, secondary, accent, and the red cut makes additional changes as well, where in the background it does the dimming as well automatically. So you only need this set of colors to generate it. So we'll, you know, generate some random colors and see what it looks like. So I came across this green one I generated, so let's try this one. Let me just quickly copy it over for you so you don't have to watch that. Okay, to update and change the colors, you just run the function called init UI colors and provide it the text colored background, primary, secondary, accent. And it'll do some other ones automatically for you. So for example, we go down to the actual function, if I can find it, init UI colors, it does the raise, sunken, muted, and dim for you. You'd have to do them yourself. And with that, if we just run it, for example, it'll automatically look pretty good. Look, we've made 0 changes to any of the code, but all the colors have already updated and changed. The only ones that obviously would have to change ourselves, like I said, was the draw vector. So if we just swap it back to its original and try it as its primary, like so, and then when we run it, there you go, look at that. Looks pretty sweet, doesn't it? We did all that and we didn't have to change a single code with it. We just had to update the init colors. And so if you find another palette you would prefer, you can just swap it out completely and you'll have a decent looking layout. So here's a project I have actually been working on that uses this package that I have. It's still kind of unfinished, but we have this like seed satchel we can have, the 12 seeds. We have these like buttons I'm going to add that adds filters. You've got these little segments and it all loops through. They update dynamically. So if I've reset it where now it's empty and I can like harvest it, for example, you see it restacks up and they just update dynamically as well, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it's been really easy to make this stuff as well. And it just looks really nice, especially for prototyping and building a demo. I don't need anything complicated. And I haven't had to draw any like textures for them as well. Like it's just all cubes and rectangles. So I'd say that kind of covers everything. There are other features I want to add. Like I do have like some prototype features like the progress bar, one for buttons, so when you hover over it, highlights, stuff like that, that I do want to implement, and of course proper text wrapping and other color support like a warning, danger as well, that are common in UI elements, so to have those would be nice as well. And if you have any ideas or suggestions, then do comment down below, or even make an issue or a pull request if you do use it yourself or whatnot and contribute to it, because I am open to contributions. I think they're relevant, but I do want to keep it like small. But anyway, I'll end it there. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video pretty interesting and informative, and do use this project as you fit. It's MIT license, you know, use it however you want, make a fork, whatever, I don't mind. Have fun with it and make some sweet UI in your Raylib projects or any other project, in fact. So I'll see you in future videos. Bye.